It was a calm yell. It wasn't like an erratic scream. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, what is this woman doing to me? A woman had indicated her name was Sarah Brody and that she believed she had mistakenly received a baby gift that belonged to me through an online registry. So she said that she'd done a little investigating on her own, and with my name being Sarah Brady and her name being Sarah Brody, she believed that the packages belonged to me. So we made arrangements to meet at her apartment for me to pick up the package. We had a pretty lengthy conversation that evening. She had talked to me about how she had become pregnant, how her and her husband had moved here from another state, how she didn't have any friends here because they were new. She was very descriptive about her life and how her life was and how happy she was to be pregnant. And she told me, she was being induced the next day. When I got there, the strange thing was that she was actually waiting inside the doorway of the apartment building. I was just kind of like, okay, she's waiting inside. She must be very anxious for me to come and, get this out of her way. So I walked into the apartment with her, and behind me, she had locked the front door. And the first thing she had said to me was, I hope that doesn't weird you out. There's an elderly lady upstairs, and she's kind of nosy, and I don't want her to be in my business, so I locked the door. The one thing that offset me right away was that her husband wasn't at home. When we entered her bedroom, the first thing that I noticed on her dresser was a magazine cover, and it had been torn out and framed, and it was actually the women of Sex and the City. And all their faces were scratched out, and different names were written above them, and one of them was Sarah. And about that same time as I'm noticing that picture, she says to me, "Why are you carrying around your car keys? Are they your security blanket?" And I think, who says that? And as we were leaving the bedroom, I noticed an inhaler on our nightstand that said Katie Smith. I thought, okay. So all these different things are going on in my mind, and I'm not really sure how to piece them together. But as we're leaving her bedroom, she drops to the floor, screaming in pain as if she's in labor. So I help her up, and I get her to the bathroom, and I tell her, you need to make sure your water hasn't broken. We need to call the doctor. Here, I'm frightened. I've never had a child of my own before. I'm scared to death. She's moaning in pain, leaned over on top of me. There's barely any room in this bathroom for either one of us to move. And at that point is when I became frightened, because she was literally gripping my arms, and she just looked up with this almost demonic look in her face. So, of course, I'm yelling out to her, making sure she's okay, and she comes right back into the living room like she had not just been moaning in pain and on the ground crying. And I said, "Did your water break?" "Nope, I don't think so." And I said to her, "Well, I haven't had a child before, but I'm pretty sure you will know when your water breaks." And I said, "I think you need to call your doctor." So I became kind of assertive at that point because I was angry. I was offended, I was angry, and I was uneasy, and it was time for me to go. So she goes into her dining room. She brings back these coupons for me, keeps insisting on trying to keep me there. And at this point, I'm like, okay, I'm leaving. Thank you for the coupons. I have to go. Well, on the back of one of them, it said, "especially for Katie Smith." So I'm like, okay. The inhaler on the nightstand says Katie Smith. The coupons say Katie Smith. She's telling me her name's Sarah Brody, but nothing up to this point nothing's in sequence. Nothing is right. she pulls out the knife. It's leaning over top of her head. I have no real time to have any thought process. I mean, it may have been 3 seconds, and I literally just reached up and knocked it out of her hand. The first thing that she said to me was, "You're not going anywhere, you." And once the knife hit the ground and she realized, hey, it's not in my hand anymore, I was leaning back against a love seat, and she flips me over it. So I pulled everything I had and literally threw her off my back, and she hit the ground, and I went running to the front door and got it unlocked. And I made it to the front of the apartment building itself. And at that point, I was trying to get the front door open, and I couldn't get the glass of the screen open. And I feel her breath on the back of my neck. She starts banging my head against the glass door, and she wraps her arm around my neck and takes the other one and just literally pulls me back. She's punching me in the side of the face, but this time I really start to fight back. I start throwing punches myself, and I think my motherly instinct kicked in, and I thought, no, you're not hurting my child. You can hurt me, but you're not gonna hurt her. And she says to me, "You're not going anywhere, but I won't hurt you. You just sit here. We have to clean up my apartment before my husband gets back." And I'm thinking to myself, does this woman have split personalities? I mean, and I'm just begging her and I'm pleading with her, please, just let's go to the hospital and check on our babies. I'm saying anything to her thinking she'll go. And at that point, she pulls out the knife and I said, "Katie, please." And when I called her Katie, she snapped and she pulled out the knife and she just came charging at me with it. And I grabbed the blade of the knife and I thought, as long as I hang on to the knife, she can't stab me with it. And I literally take my hands and just twist the blade until I'm able to get it loose from her. And I just started swinging the knife towards Katie, hoping not to stab her, not to hurt her, for her to back up so that I can get out. And she just keeps coming and coming. She just goes for it. And at that point is when I stabbed her. She fell back in her love seat and the blood began to immerse through her sweatshirt. She looked up at me and said, "You stabbed me, you effing bitch." And at that point, I ran out of the apartment building screaming for help. The detectives came in and they asked me why I thought Katie was pregnant. And I told them because she was. I'm not crazy. I've seen her twice. I just was in, an altercation with her. I know she was pregnant. And they said, well, we believe she might have been wearing something, or maybe she had stuffed her shirt. They said, by the way, she didn't make it. The police found so much overwhelming evidence. She had faked that they know of at least 11 pregnancies from the 8th grade on. She had faked stillborn deliveries. She had collected money for funerals. I mean, family members really thought she was pregnant. She had baby showers. She was a very psychotic person, but very articulate and very well spoken and knew exactly what she was doing. I wholeheartedly believe that I survived because of my daughter. I believe that she gave me the strength with God to prevail. And instead of becoming a victim, I became the survivor.